featuring the people who make York special.
It's the warmness and it's the humour. The people who make it.
The people who work in the factory are very, very proud of the fact that this is the home of Kit Kat.
And the organisations doing amazing things.
A fair number of women say that Kira has saved their lives, so we know we make a big difference.
From tourism and history to business, charity and the arts.
We are as equally important in the history of this country as London is and as Oxford is.
I love the idea that York becomes the UK's alternative to London.
This is Between These Walls, a podcast for York with Sophie Hudson. Hello and welcome to another episode of Between These Walls. Now this is the 10th episode of the podcast, and firstly I'd like to say thank you for listening. And if you like what you hear, I do recommend that you go and check out some of the other episodes, but I would love it, and it would really help me out and it would help the podcast out for the future if you could give the podcast a follow on whatever platform that you're listening to. If you tap follow or subscribe, whatever the button says, and then that means that you'll never miss a future episode. And it also really helps me out. So that would be wonderful if you could do that on this 10th episode. So to celebrate the 10th episode, I thought it would be apt to speak to a York success story. Now, if you're a parent in York, you have probably, most definitely come across York Mumbler. This is a website and online community that gives parents endless ideas of what to do with their kids in and around York. But it's so much more than just an events directory. It's grown to become a place where parents can connect, particularly if they're feeling a little isolated, which I know that most parents may do at some point. I met up with Emily Pickard, the founder of York Mumbler and mum of two herself. Emily very kindly took some time out of her really busy schedule to join me and talk about her journey to building a huge online community. In this episode, Emily talks a lot about how becoming a mum changed her perspective on life and her career, and as a result, York Mumbler was born. So we started by talking about that, what Mumbler means to its users and where it all began.
One of the things that does get relayed to me a lot about Mumbler, because I am predominantly an online business, so it's actually quite rare that I come face to face with people, but when I do, they come and tell me that Mumbler has been a lifeline to them, and that just means so much, because in whatever way they've experienced Mumbler, it's helped them out, and ultimately that's why I set it up. So yeah, in terms of setting up Mumbler, it was over 10 years ago now. My eldest daughter's 11, and I set up Mumbler when I was pregnant with her, really for myself. So it was never going to be what it is today. I set it up as a coffee morning, as a bit of a way to meet other parents in York. I'm from Harrogate originally, and my sister had set up Mumbler in Harrogate. And so I knew York and the pubs and the clubs of this fantastic city, but I didn't know what it was like to be a parent here. And being a parent does, change your life, whether you're a parent, carer, step-parent, anything. It does change your life having a little one to look after. So I set up Mumbler with the idea of meeting other people, finding my community, finding other people who were going through a similar stage of life to what I was doing at the time, and making some friends and bringing us together. That was what it was all about.
Yeah, so just talk a bit about the sort of timeline of Mumbler. So you mentioned your sister. She's sort of the origin of Mumbler, isn't she,
yes,
in Harrogate?
Chief Mumbler.
Chief Mumbler. I like that title. What was the point that you decided to kind of go, do you know what, this is something that York really needs and this is something that I can do full time?
So actually, going from it being the sort of coffee morning idea, I set it up on Facebook in 2011. So that was when I was pregnant with my daughter. Like I say, my sister had set it up in Harrogate already. My mum had actually come up with the name Mumbler because at the time, and I love the name Mumbler because it was about mums chatting originally. That's what it was, getting together, sharing conversations, stories of staying up late at night and no one getting any sleep and all that kind of stuff. So Mumbler was born in Harrogate, with my sister. And then when I fell pregnant, actually, even before I started Mumbler, I'd forgotten about this, but before I started Mumbler, I'd started a Facebook group called Your York, and with the idea of that community, but it was okay, but it didn't really gel, and it's because we didn't have something to make it gel. And I think the thing with Mumbler that makes us gel is that we've all got kids. We're all going through similar things, and often you feel like you're the only one, but you're not. Other people are going through the same thing. So I started Mumbler in 2011 as a community group. At the time, I had a full-time job. I was working in marketing in the food and drinks industry. So I never for a moment thought it would be my job. I never expected to be self-employed.
Yeah.
But 3 years later, to be honest, once my sister had proven that it worked in Harrogate, she'd set it up as a business and a website. I followed suit because Mumbler is absolutely my passion. Bringing people together, providing them with information and putting it all in one place is what I love to do. I love a list, and it's basically a glorified list is Mumbler. And so it was in 2015 that the website launched. By that time, the Facebook group had about 3,000 people on it, so kind of enough to be an audience. And then fast forward to now, we're in 2024 now, aren't we? Sometimes forget the year. Yeah. And, I've got over 22,000 people on that Facebook group now, all parents and carers, grandparents, people who are looking after children. 22,000 people, and I get 30,000 people a month on the website. So, yeah, it's very well used here in York.
The numbers are huge, and just sort of testament really to the hard work that you've put in, I think.
Me and a lot of other people now.
Yeah.
So in the early days of Mumbler, it was, in terms of York, it was just me, and I loved it. I used to go out, with my daughters and do all the classes and the groups and spread the word. Really, I've always thought if you've got a little hidden gem and a great, group or class or something that's going on, or a little cafe that happens to give excellent customer service, then more people should know about it, and that business should get some praise for it. And that's what it started off as, was just me, but a few years into it I realised it was becoming much bigger than I could handle, and I suppose like all babies I had to let it grow beyond beyond me, and originally I had some volunteers helping me. I still have volunteers helping to this day. A lady called Leanne, who was just a lifesaver in the early days. She was the first person who I thought cared about Mumbler and this community of parents as much as I did. And now I've got a team of, I think it's 11 of us now. So I've got
amazing.
Yeah, someone who works for me, Fiona, she's amazing. Jane writes incredible blogs, has done for a long time. She's fantastic at doing the research for those. And then a team of other freelancers and volunteers who help me with adminning in the Facebook group. And we've got what we call community champions as well. So a team of people who, obviously York is a reasonably big place, population of over 200,000 people. And I can't possibly get into every single neighbourhood and every single village hall and find out what's going on. So they gather the information for us, let us know what's going on, particularly those sort of free and cheap things that are really important at the moment for parents. And often, for new parents, we often need those free and cheap things because you've got little ones to occupy, 24 hours a day pretty much. So they go out and gather the information, and then we put it all together on the website. So there's a team of us, and I couldn't do it without them now.
We'll come more onto this sort of the way it sort of feels to me like a bit of a lifeline to parents, but we'll come back onto that because I want to dig in a little bit to your background, because you mentioned that you worked in marketing, didn't you?
That's right.
And it was for quite a big brand. We can mention the brand. I'm happy doing that.
Yeah, well, a few different brands. So I worked, my job just before Mumbler was working for McCain Foods. So that's the chips, and I launched the jacket potato with them, which I loved. Fantastic company.
Amazing.
And I worked for Arla Foods before that, Kerry Foods. It was chips and cheese, basically. It was my background.
Nice. Yeah, excellent. So obviously you had a very successful career, and then became a mum, and then Mumbler was born.
Yes.
From that. How did you feel leaving behind that career that you had? What was the decision-making process like for you?
Do you know, I can remember this exactly, the moment, because, it's so hard, and I know there'll be a lot of parents out there listening to this. The juggle is real, and the juggle's real whether you're working for someone else or working for yourself or whatever. You've just got so much more you need to do in the same amount of time when you've got little ones to look after. So the juggle's real. But I remember this point, and it was after I'd gone back to work at McCain for my after my second sort of time off on maternity leave. I went back, and I had started Mumbler, but not as a business, but I'd started it as a community group in the meantime. And I realised there was this thing that I felt so passionately about. I'd always loved my job as well in marketing, and I was passionate about that. But when I had children, your perspective does just change, and I wasn't as, I suppose, ambitious. I don't know if that's the right word, but career wasn't my number one priority, whereas I think before it had been. My kids were my priority and my family life, my husband and home. And I remember this moment where I was sat in a meeting. I'm sure lots of your listeners will have had this, and a meeting that almost felt, like I say, McCain was a fantastic company, but we were all in there and I thought, what are we really achieving? What's really happening in this meeting? We'll take away some actions and we might do bits. It's stuff that we've maybe talked about before. And I was just thinking about my children in the nursery there, and I was thinking, my time, it's not that it's more valuable now, but it has a different value to me now. Now I've got children than it did before. And I wanted to, spend as much time as I could with them. And I thought, you think you need a certain amount of money, and you find on maternity leave you have a lot less money than you would do if you were working. Yeah. And I found that you can live off less. And I just thought, life's for living. You've got to take that leap. And I'll be honest, I've never worked so hard as I have since I've been self-employed. It's not that I'm working less, but the difference is I've kind of got the choice of what I do and when. So in those early days, when I left, came out of that meeting and I thought, no, my corporate time is over for now, certainly. And I have got this thing called Mumbler, which is a seed of an idea. It wasn't earning, anything like a proper wage at that time. But I just thought, I've got to make this work. There's legs in this. I can see people need it. We've had a few people approach us saying they want to advertise because it's been effective for them already, just through word of mouth. And I thought, we've got a seed of an idea that can mean that I can be with my kids. And so that was the motivation. And then, thankfully, 9 years later, here we are, and it is a thriving business as well as a community. I'm proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. You definitely should be. And I suppose it's like you say, there will be a lot of parents, particularly women, I think, a lot of mums out there who've had successful careers and are kind of going through perhaps that same process of, do you know what, my family's my priority now. Yeah. And I've done the career thing. That was my priority a few years ago. My family's my priority now. So what would let's put you on the spot, what would be your message to any mum going through that sort of process?
My message would be, it's normal. That's the first thing to know, is that, we put these labels on ourselves, don't we? Of, well, I'm a career woman. I always have been and always will be driven. But I suppose what I'm driven about has changed. And so my message to the people, it's completely natural if your priorities change. It's also okay if they haven't. We all parent differently. And that's one of the big things I wanted. I recognise straight away when you've got a group of all of these people chatting to each other. People parent differently. Some people, I absolutely wanted to get back to work after my maternity leaves. I was ready to get back. And there's some parents who don't want to and they want to stay with their children. And neither's right, neither's wrong. You've got to... I think I learned what my instincts were for the first time after having children. I kind of didn't know what they were. And it's that voice that's sort of telling you who you are and what you're doing, and listen to that and try. Yes, you can go and chat to people, get advice and all of that, but no one knows you and your family and your setup better than you do. So for me, the pull was too great and I wanted to be with my kids. And thankfully, I'd set up this group and there was this seed of an idea that I could turn into something that the other piece of advice I'd have is try and find something that you're passionate about. And it can be hard because I didn't think I would ever be self-employed because I thought I didn't have any skills that would turn into a self-employed, path. Until I realised my skill was, keeping lists and sharing information and being a bit of a conduit for people. And I've turned that into a career, God knows how. But that's sort of what has ended up happening. I think just know you're not the only one. Your priorities do change. That's completely natural. And try and be really true to who you are and what matters to you, and whether that's going back to a career full time, whether that is completely staying off, or whether that's somewhere in between and finding a different way. We all do it differently.
Between These Walls is a podcast just for York. We want to keep it growing and provide more local content that you want to hear. So there are 3 ways you can help. Firstly, I'm on the lookout for local sponsors. If you're from a York business and want to promote on this podcast, drop us an email to btw@soapyproductions.co.uk. That's btw@soapy, SOAPY, productions.co.uk. Secondly, if you know someone who should be featured on Between These Walls, let me know. I'm looking for the people who make York special. That's anyone from an interesting business or with an unusual story, perhaps a charity doing amazing things, or someone working hard under the radar to make York better. Let me know who I need to talk to. Just email btw@soapyproductions.co.uk. And finally, you can help this podcast grow right now by subscribing. Wherever you're listening, just hit the subscribe button and that helps us out massively. Also, follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn if you just search for Between These Walls York. Thank you. Now back to the conversation. Yeah, really great advice. So we were sort of talking before about how Mumbler's kind of become a bit of a lifeline. It sort of saves, I think, parents from being stuck with what to do, and also isolation. I know we've sort of talked about that off mic before, so we will come on to that. But how does it make you feel that York Mumbler has become such a community and a place where parents can kind of reach out? And does it kind of take care of itself? I know you said that you've now got a team of people sort of pulling the information together, but then you've also got this sort of second level where parents are really sort of reaching out and helping each other as well. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's very much what's happened. I had to remind myself in the early days, I kind of felt this responsibility for the whole group. And then I realised I'm not a parent to 22,000 people. You know, I had to remember that, because then sometimes late at night something might happen in the group, and you know, there's some people that go on there and they're quite desperate and things are going on and they're in a really low place. And early on, I used to sort of really take that responsibility on myself to sort of help them and fix them. And obviously, you know, I can't. I'm not that qualified. I'm not that person. You know, they need to go to speak to someone who knows what they're doing a bit more. But I did take it seriously, and then I realised, you know, my role is really signposting, or Mumbler's role is signposting, and like you say, the community do that to each other. So I don't personally, you know, have to do that. And even within my admin team, they're incredible and they do an awful lot. But I sort of always try to reiterate to them, you know, we're not there to parent 22,000 people, but the community does it with, like you say, if someone posts on there, you know, I'm feeling low, or I'm going through this with my baby or my child, is anyone in the same place? You will get tens, if not hundreds of comments in support of that person. And, you know, back to the isolation point that you were talking about before, we do have people posting on there saying, you know, I've got a baby or I've got a child that's maybe 2 and I still haven't met any friends. And, you know, it takes a lot of guts to do that. You know, it's quite a vulnerable place. But inevitably they do get people replying on there saying, well, I live in that area and, you know, well, let's meet for a coffee. And those real life connections that happen, whether that is online or, you know, face to face, happen regularly. I was at my baby brunch this morning and a lady came up to me and told me she's actually got 4 children, but one of her children, she's having particular sort of issues and struggles with at the moment. And she posted about this on Mumbler, and she met another mum who she's actually never met face to face, but they've got almost daily WhatsApp with each other. And that just makes me so proud, like so happy that something that I've created, but then everyone else has facilitated and you know, made those connections happen. And yeah, I'm so pleased that is going on. And I'm sure there's lots of stories I don't know about, but I do love it when I hear about them, because, you know, I have bad days too and think, why am I bothering doing this? And you hear a story like that and you go, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. That's brilliant. I'm so glad that those people have met up. I suppose it must be, I mean, like I said before, I'm a stepmom to a beautiful 14-year-old boy who is the loveliest. But I can imagine, and I've heard stories of people, it must be very easy to sort of end up being isolated without you meaning for it to happen, when you've got a new baby or a 2-year-old that you may feel like you've not seen the light of day for 2 years. What would you say to people like that? Yeah, it can easily happen. And again, I think pandemic probably didn't help with that. But again, I would say, you know, I think a lot of people have, and I know I've been guilty of this too, imagining that everyone else is in a group of friends. Everyone else is okay. And it's just you that's, you know,
struggling to make friends. So I would say, make those first few steps, and you might have to make it a few times. If there's whether it's My Baby Brunch, whether there's lots of amazing groups and classes and things that you can go to. Sometimes you can go to them and there's a load of people talking to each other and you feel like they're friends and you don't go speak to them, and it can feel so awkward, being like, can I be your friend and can I chat to you? But if you can just make those first few steps, you tend to find that people are, feeling exactly the same way that you're feeling, and it might be that they've actually only just met those people last week or this week, and most people are good, most people are kind, and if you're vulnerable and open and put yourself out there just as much as you can possibly manage, then you'll find a warm reception. Don't give up, and don't think it's someone else's job to no one's going to come to you and say, come to our group, and you've got to kind of make those steps yourself, if that makes sense. And everyone's feeling the same way. I've seen it time and time again. I stood up this morning at the baby brunch and said to everyone, I know you all feel a little bit awkward. I know that lots of you here don't know anyone, but if you see someone by themselves, go and chat to them. And that applies to when you're on the street, when you're in the park. If you see some parents there with their babies and you've got a baby the same age, just go up to them and try and make that first move and just say, I'm by myself, can I join you guys? Of course they're going to say yes.
Mumbler is there. You've also got loads of events and activities and things listed on there. You said to me it's all about making life easier for parents.
That's right.
So even if you don't go along to something like the baby brunch, or you haven't met anybody that you can talk to, some of these other things that are going on in activities, there's so much going on in York that you can go to, isn't there? Yeah, we live in the best city in the world for that, I think. Absolutely. In terms of family friendliness, I don't think it gets much better than York. And I can say that with pretty much certainty because, we've got about 3,000 listings on the website. So, as a rough estimate, there's at least 3,000 things going on in York for families and for kids, whether that's attractions that you can go to. So, I regularly had days out just with me and the kids. And, if we can get a family day with me and the dad as well, then fantastic. But that's not always the way. So do go out, by yourself and have a picnic. There's lots of free things to do in York as well. And I think that's brilliant. You can go along to the parks, museum gardens, and thanks to places like the Bid and Visit York, we've got lots of free activities, really great stuff going on for families, as well as the play groups, the classes. Some of them you have to pre-book, but some of them you can just turn up, and I think they're really, really valuable ones because, when you've got little ones particularly, some days might go well, some days might not. So there's plenty of stuff that you don't have to pre-book as well that you can go along to. And it's all listed on Mumbler. What did we do before Mumbler? Well, I don't know. That's when I had my first child, I created it. So I guess, it's crazy, isn't it? Like I said, it's sort of testament to the hard work that you've put in, that this is all now available at our fingertips, and you can find anything that you want to do. My next question, what is your favourite thing to do as a parent with your children in York? Wow, that's such a tough one. Or what do your kids love doing? My kids are really into their theatre. Particularly my eldest daughter, they're both very creative children. So my eldest daughter loves her theatre. So we go to stage school on a Saturday morning. They're currently working on a production that's going to be at the Grand Opera House in the next month, which will be fab. And my youngest daughter is creative in more of an arty way. So she goes to a little craft club. So that's their sort of regular activities that they like doing. But they also love getting involved in the different festivals that happen all the time in York. So, the Ice Trail was on not too long ago. The Snooks Trail is out right now. Obviously, we're recording this in March 2024, and we've got the Snooks Trail, which is fantastic. Again, free. So they love those kind of trails and activities. Or, going to their favourite little place. There's a lot of places that let kids eat free in the summer holidays. They love getting involved in that. The Viking Festival they adore because that's got lots of nice crafty activities for kids as well. So, there's something every season. It depends what time of year you ask me, but they love those. I was going to say, you must be the person to ask. You're the person to know, aren't you? I think if people... Do you know, the truth is my memory's absolutely shocking. So that's why I have a website that's got it all on, because it means that I can go and refer to it as well. But again, everyone's different. So I couldn't tell you what the best thing is. I could tell you what we enjoy doing, and that can vary from week to week and month to month.
But some people like things that are much more active. They've got children that really need wearing out. I'd say my kids are less that way, but they like doing things that are a bit more, I don't know, things like the Yorkshire Museum and, where they can go and they love history and they love art and that kind of stuff. So that's their vibe, but we're all different.
Yeah, and as you said, York is a fantastic city for all this stuff. If there's 3,000 things going on in York right now, there's no excuse to not get out of the house and go do something. I want to talk about your involvement in kind of the business landscape in York, because obviously Mumbler is funded by advertisers, so you have to go out there and meet lots of businesses. How do you feel being part of the business community in York? I find it's a very open, very welcoming community, and there's so many businesses that you can speak to. But how do you feel about it?
I completely agree with you. I think I love being, in answer to your question, I love being a part of that business community, and I love being able to help other businesses within it as well. And plenty of people have helped me along the way. I find I always think with that business community side of things, if you're willing to help, then you'll be welcome. If you're willing to be part of that. I think we're also passionate about York. Most of the people here are very passionate about York and want to show off our city and also make it as good as it possibly can be. I love being a part of it, and I enjoy actually, I don't go to loads of networking-y type things, but the ones that I go to now, like the ones I've seen you at in the past, I really love chatting to people who are willing to kind of, put their effort where their mouth is, and, there's always going to be challenges in business. We've just had a huge challenge in the pandemic and people are still struggling for money. But there's a lot of very talented, very creative people and a lot of people who are willing to put the work in to help make York an even better place to live for the people that live here. Yeah.
And do you find that it's, as a person who set up a business almost from scratch, especially at a sort of pivotal point in your career when you decided to make a go of Mumbler, did you feel like there was support there for people starting a business as well?
I think the answer to that is there was, but I didn't know about it at that time. There's support at City of York Council, but to be honest, I only found out about that about 4 or 5 years into business. I mean, my parents are self-employed, so I didn't think, right, I'm going to start a business. Who can help me do that? I thought, well, I've got to do that. That's sort of the way I was brought up and the way I thought it kind of worked. But I learned these things along the way. And yes, I have since then received help and support. But because I was starting at Mumbler and I had my sister who'd already done it in Harrogate, I suppose she was my biggest support and biggest sort of cheerleader and helped me, navigate different things. And yeah, there is support in York. But you've got to kind of, it's not just going to come to you. If you're starting a business, you need to go and put yourself out there and make yourself helpful to people too. You sort of notice very quickly the people who just expect. But most people, are the people that succeed are the people who are willing to give and sort of prove themselves, I've found, and they're the ones who stick around, which we've got a lot of independent and small businesses in York, and that's because there's a lot of people with that great attitude, who I'm proud to work alongside.
Yeah. So it's not just all online, York Mumbler. You've also got things offline. You've already mentioned about the baby brunches as well, which are Impossible.
That's right, yeah.
And then you tell me about these nearly new sales.
Yeah, so I've been doing these for a number of years, actually, and they are about 5-ish times a year. I run them at the Poppleton Centre, and they started out from my, I hate waste, and I hate spending money unnecessarily. When it comes to having a new baby, people think they need to go out and spend a load of money, and some of the best advice we got was actually from one of my husband's best friends. When you have a baby, you think you've got to go and buy the latest pram and the latest, cots and clothes and all of this stuff. And we there's all these estimates about how much does it cost to have a child and all of this. And we spoke to one of my husband's friends about this, and he said it costs as much as you want it to cost. If you want to go out and buy all those stuff, absolutely, you go for it. If you can afford that and, and that's going to make you feel good, go for it. That's it. There is joy in that. However, if you don't have a lot of money, or if you're like me and actually I don't like going, like I'm driving the most battered up old car. I don't like buying expensive things necessarily if I don't get joy from them, I'd rather, get my house done up or something than spend money on those things. Then there's plenty of amazing second-hand options, and it also means there's less going into landfill. It's more economically friendly and, and environmentally friendly too. So I set up the Nearly New sales with the idea of parents being able to obviously sell their nearly new items. And when I say nearly new, some of them are actually new that get sold there, because you have a baby, you don't necessarily know how big it is, and you think you're going to buy all these beautiful dresses and dress them beautifully all the time. But in reality, those beautiful dresses get scrunched up and are really hard to put them in and all that kind of stuff. So you end up going for the more easy items for them to wear. So you get all of these, gorgeous secondhand, maybe never worn or very barely worn items. And we have got the Nearly New sales so that people can sell those things. They can either book a table and sell them, or obviously we get a lot of people coming along to buy from those places as well. So rather than having to spend hundreds and thousands, you can spend maybe a few quid and get some really, really great things for your babies and toddlers.
That's a great idea. And I bet very helpful for a lot of parents. But also, I think if you're like, I'm a bit like you, I don't like buying new. I spend a lot of time on things like Vinted.
Yeah.
Buying stuff. But if there's somewhere where you can go and have a good rummage.
Yeah, and see it in the flesh, in real life. And people do sell at kind of rock bottom prices there, because we all, have so much, or a lot of us have so much. We've got, lofts full of things that we're never really going to use again. And people have been maybe hanging on to thinking, am I going to have any more kids? And then they don't. And then, they've got so much to sell and that has barely been touched. And the Nearly New sales are very, very popular, and we run about five, 6 a year. And I could probably do double that if I wanted to, but I want to spend time with my own kids as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a lot about everything that goes on and making parents' lives easier. What about people who are pregnant or they're expecting right now? Is there any way that they can sort of get involved in things? Is there anything out there for them as well?
Yeah, so I mentioned the Nearly New sales, but what I should have called them was Nearly New Sale and Expecting Parents events. So at those events, we have people buying and selling nearly new items, but we also have some kind of experts and people, supporters there to help you. So we have people like, for example, Treasure Chest, who come along and help you feeding your babies. We've got the NCT Sling Library. So if you're thinking about doing baby wearing, they come along and show you how to sort of fit different slings and that kind of thing. We have people who can do baby scans, come along to those that you can book in with, and baby groups, and lots of people who can advise and support you. The Maternity Voices Partnership is someone I would say would be great to get in touch with. They're great for feeding back information between parents who've just had babies and the York Hospital. So they're kind of the feedback, one of the ways that you can feedback, and they can get themes of information. They sometimes come along to the Nearly New Sale and Expecting Parents events as well. So I'd say certainly if you're expecting a baby, they're a good thing to come to, not just to buy things, but also to talk to other local kind of experts and people who are there to support you.
Amazing. Emily, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I was really interested just to hear a bit about your story and how Mumbler came to be the kind of juggernaut that it is, online in particular, and the way that you sort of help parents. And you're very passionate, it seems, about making sure that nobody's left out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's something I feel strongly about, is trying to... we're all better helping each other out, We've all got too much to do. We've all got our stresses, and we're all going through something at one time or another. And sometimes you feel great, sometimes you don't feel great. And I think we're ridiculous to think we can do it by ourselves, and we should lean on others for support, and then offer support and ask for support when we need it. And our lives would just be so much easier, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Absolutely. In all areas of life, yeah. Completely, yeah. So thank you so much. It's been really lovely to chat to you.
Thank you so much for having me on.